Okay, good morning, everyone. This is the Opportunity Zone webinar. Thank you so much for your guys' patience. We had a few technical difficulties logging in this morning, so hopefully everybody is all settled. You have your coffee, you have your lunch, whatever you need to be able to get into this Opportunity Zone. This is a little bit different than what we have normally done in the past, so we'll do some quick introductions. My name is Kirstie McPherson. I am the Director of Marketing here for Golden Shovel Agency. And on the line with me, I have Sam Howard. He is the operator and manager of Northeast Kentucky Development. Sam, do you want to go ahead and say hello really quick?
Good morning, Kirstie.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is going to be really great. So just a quick little bit for everybody here on the line. This is going to be more of think of like a radio talk show type of activity where we're just going to kind of go through. Sam's going to talk about his experience specifically around the opportunity zones that he's created and then what they're doing over in Northeast Kentucky to be able to promote them and develop those opportunity zones out. We'll cover everything from an opportunity zone fund all the way down to attracting industry and marketing activities. So with that, Sam, thank you so much, and we'll go ahead and get started. Will you just give a really quick, brief overview of Northeast Kentucky Development and your guys' opportunity zones?
Thank you, Kirstie. I'm going to be working from a different screen where we had so many different issues with the internet this morning, so I'm actually on the cell phone, and I'm trying to keep the noise down, so I apologize for that. Northeast Kentucky is a newly created about a year ago opportunity zone economic development organization. We realized real quickly when the regulations were first issued and the legislation was passed in December of 2017 that opportunity zones had the ability to transform rural communities. And we live in a rural community where we've constructed and built and developed and owned and leased real estate for better than 35 years in the Eastern Kentucky area. The opportunity zones offer a great benefit to what we've done because it allows capital to be put in the underdeveloped areas and where capital has never been put before, by offering a bit of a carrot, if you will, to anyone that wants to defer and not pay legally capital gains tax. Kirstie, if you would work through the different slides and the questions you have, and if we could just handle this like a talk show format, and you basically ask me the questions, and we'll just go back and forth if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, nope, that's perfect. So that was a really good brief overview of kind of what you're doing over there for Northeast Kentucky. So will you kind of go over how you set up the Opportunity Zone Fund and what the different types of variations of those funds are, and specifically what you are working on with Northeast Kentucky and what you found was the best? I would like to preface this to the group by saying that this is by no means any type of legal advice or anything like that. So this is one economic developer's kind of personal experience. And so just kind of wanted to preface all of that. But Sam, if you would just kind of talk about the Opportunity Zone Fund and what you had to do in regards to all of those.
Well, Kirstie, the question you ask has got more than one answer. And let me delve into the answers that can be presented. And Kirstie is exactly right. Anytime you're investing in anything, whether you're doing it personally, privately, with a group, or through someone else, the very first thing we always recommend is call your legal advisor and call your accountant, because they can steer you in the correct direction to keep you from stepping out of bounds and creating a big issue, either a legal issue and or a civil penalty issue with having to pay extra tax. With that being said, there's actually three types of opportunity zones funds. And let me just tell you how it works, and then I'll get into the funds real quickly and we can move forward. An opportunity zone property has been delegated by the federal government through the states as a low-income census tract. The local governments within each state designated areas that were then certified, and all of the areas have been pre-certified. There will be no more certifications for additional tracts in the next 10 years. And the program runs for 10 years. but it is a government program, so it is very likely to be extended after 10 years. We know that most of those happen that way. To be eligible, the property has to be in the zone, and the property has to be purchased, developed with Opportunity Zone funds. You create Opportunity Zone funds by realizing a capital gain on your taxes. The capital gain can be anything from sale of property, sale of appreciated value in equipment, stock gains in the stock market, or anything that would show up on your taxes as a capital gain. That you would invest in a fund. And a capital fund for an opportunity zone, there are national funds that are going out and trying to develop different properties with their funds. There are also individual funds that are being set up by individual people. That all being said, the way to look at it, you can set up a private opportunity zone fund, and that private opportunity zone fund would be owned by such as one person, a man and a wife, or two partners. And that is a closed fund that cannot have outside investment of any kind. And it cannot be advertised in any way. You can't talk about it until after you've closed the funding for that fund. There are two other types of funds that are available. The first one is a closed fund that is for accredited investors only. That one can also not be advertised, and you can't solicit from outside folks except for folks that are accredited individuals. Now, the way a person is established to be accredited, an accredited individual is someone that earns for the last 2 years $200,000 of household income, or has a net worth of $1 million, not including the value of their home. The other type of fund is a opportunity fund that is open to all investors. And that is all from different SEC rules. And that one can be advertised. You can get in for whatever the minimum amount is that's established by the fund originator. And that one, anyone can be involved in, but there's a lot of different requirements and rules with the three different types. And as I said, the very first thing you do is talk with an attorney that is involved in venture capital, private equity. If anyone's familiar with the EB-5 program, which is a green card type program for folks to come in and work with a visa, the economic zones and enterprise zones that were established several years ago, those kind of firms can point you in the correct direction. And then you can actually invest in your local community, or you can invest on a nationwide basis with some of the national funds. Kirstie, I think I've covered it there. If there's anything else, or we can go to the next question.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you. I think that's one of the most confusing things, I think, for a lot of people, is just the various types of opportunity zone funds and how to go about setting it up. So the next question that kind of rolls into this, that is kind of common, is what role does the economic developer or local government have in opportunity zone funds? Should they be the ones setting these up? Should it be private individuals setting them up? What is your kind of like advice on that?
Well, as far as if we have local government officials, economic development, whether it be an EDO or an IDA, the economic development directors, those folks, they play a key role in two major areas. The first area is identifying the areas within their community, county, or state that are eligible. And hopefully you have areas within your industrial area that's zoned correctly. And a lot of the bigger cities, and I'll use Louisville, Kentucky, for example, and Northern Kentucky, which is Boone, Kenton, and Campbell counties. Boone, Kenton, and Campbell, those three counties went together from what it's known as Tri-Ed, the Tri-County, the three-county economic development group, and they formed a prospectus that they've put online. You can research it and go to their website and get a copy of their prospectus that shows the advantages of locating there, where the census tracts are, some of the folks that are working within them. And Louisville, through the Greater Louisville Foundation, done the same thing for the city of Louisville in Kentucky. So that's a great way to promote your zones. The other thing that can happen, if you have individuals within your community, and we're working with a group on this right now, we're working with a group of individuals from a local community that want, and they have a philanthropic bent to what they're wanting to do, to where they're not so much looking for the interest and the capital appreciation as this group is of attracting industry. So if they maintain the capital, they're putting it in a organization that is going to try attract add-on capital to bring in industry. So you can do that and form an individual, a community could form an individual zone and create a capital benefit for the add-ons within that zone. The other thing is, two opportunity zone funds independently could invest in a single tract of land if it's a large tract. So it's not a one or none. Now, some of your big national funds are going to treat this like private equity funds, venture capital funds, to where we'll use $100 million for a big number. They're going to try to raise, and some of them already have raised $100 million or more, and they are going to take that money and go out and try to find an investment that matches up in an opportunity zone area so that they can deploy that capital within their fund. Now, there's a couple of rules you need to remember. You cannot buy property, then realize the capital gain and use it as an opportunity zone. You have to realize the capital gain first and then invest in the property or a business. You can actually invest in an opportunity zone business, and you can't invest in a fund until you have the capital gain, and the capital gain has to go through a fund. It cannot be directly invested in the business. It has to be through a fund structure so reporting can be done correctly for the IRS and the government.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. I know that's a really big, tricky area for a lot of people to navigate as well. Moving on kind of from the funding, but once you have the Opportunity Zone Fund, you have kind of all of those pieces put together. How are you marketing your Opportunity Zone, either both for potential investors to come in, accredited investors, or even an open investors to come in? And then this question is kind of twofold, but at that point, and then again, when it comes to attracting actual industry to move to the Opportunity Zone.
Well, that's Kirstie, that's great, because what you just said triggered something that I need to preface something with that I forgot. The fund that we have established, we have two funds established. The first fund is a private fund, and we have not released anything else on any other fund, because you can't do an advertising unless you go through certain regulations to make them open. So in that case, as far as advertising, you can't really advertise the funds because you can't do a general solicitation. But what you can do is exactly what we have done and we're implementing right now. We, through Golden Shovel, and I'll put a little plug in for Kirstie, working with Kirstie herself as our project manager and representative for Golden Shovel. About a year ago, we launched a website for Northeast Kentucky Development. It was a very robust website that talks about our areas that we work in. It's basically a 12-county area here in northeastern Kentucky. And we also were doing lead generation, and Kirstie could talk to you after this if you want to talk to her about all these different things. We've also done some marketing and market study work. We've had Kirstie do a couple of surveys for us to be able to showcase our local talent and the companies that are already here and how well they're doing. Plus, we've been doing some marketing at trade shows specific to the industry. We're specifically focused on aerospace and automotive because we have a very large base, and that's a growing. Actually, Kentucky's largest export is aerospace related. No, it's not bourbon, it's not horses, it's aerospace. But those two do run a close second in my mind. That being said, I think it's very important for the economic development directors and the local county officials to be out and be seen. As we talk to companies, what they want to see is, what is the local environment. They want to know, do you get good interaction with companies that are located there? Do you get good interaction with the officials? So when you marry those two, the company that you may be recruiting, if you have an opportunity zone, you can go out and talk to a national firm, and we'll use Northeast Kentucky Development, for example. We work in a large area, not just here with our design, build, lease back. Basically, we design the building, we build it for them, and then we lease it to an industrial tenant on a certain term. We can do that, and we're working with some groups. If a local county or a community or EDO, IDA, if they've located a business, but the business doesn't want to do the upfront capital, we're going to come in and structure the capital stack to make the deal work, whether it's a zone we create privately, a zone that the community creates as a community zone. We haven't done one yet, but we're working through some due diligence on a couple of them we think will work. So I think the EDAs and EDOs and IDAs really have a great role in making opportunity zones work.
Perfect. Thank you. In regards to kind of what is coming up from now until the end of 2019, and with the new ruling that just came out with the IRS, what should communities and regions do for the remaining of 2019 for the biggest impact? This is probably the largest and heftiest question amongst all of these. So what in your mind should be the biggest kind of focus from now going forward?
Well, there's two answers to that question also. The biggest focus would be if you're looking at it purely from a fund standpoint and an investor wanting to realize the best they can for their capital gain and the appreciation and the rulings that's come down in the two different tranches. There was one in October, and then we had one in April. To the end of 2019 is where you get your best benefit. If you get into an opportunity zone fund by the end of 2019, you defer your taxes until the end of 2026 calendar year. If you hold it 5 years and keep the investment, you get a 10%. We call it a haircut. You pay 10% less. It's called a step up in the gain on your taxes at the end of 2026. If you hold it for 7 years after 2019, you get another 5% step up in basis, so that you only, at the end of 2026, you only pay tax on 85% of the capital gain you realized by the end of 2019. But then the bigger benefit to it, holding the fund for 10 years or longer, and the final rule is not out on how long you're required or you can hold it before you have to divest of the fund, but we're hearing 2039 or 2049. They're kind of going back and forth. So you can hold it for a considerable amount of time, and your capital gain accrues tax-free that whole time, as long as you leave it in the zone. After that 10 years, when you pay your initial tax that you would have to pay this year on capital gains, you'll pay that at the end of calendar year 2026, so basically in 2027. Other than that, all appreciation in capital after 10 years, you pay no tax. It's tax-free. Now, so that's your biggest benefit with everything we've seen. But you also need to remember that you are not required to have it done by 2019. You can go in 2020, 2021, and have a fund set up. You just don't realize as much step up in basis on saving tax on your initial investment. But if you do it in 2020, hold it for 10 years, then after that 10 years, all of the additional appreciated capital gains is tax-free again. So it's not a one size fits all, nor is it we have to get it done by the end of 2019 or we lose out on the benefit. The benefit is still there.
Perfect. So what you're kind of saying is that really this year it should just be kind of setting up everything, making sure all of your ducks are in a row, making your region or your community in those zones attractive for investment, and be able to just be seen, have that communication, and going through all of the marketing approaches. That's essentially what your experience
I agree. And there's one more thing I would add to that, Kirstie. Um, Economic development and marketing economic development, there's a tool that way too many people fail to use. We all know that the companies are looking for what's our incentives. They're saying, what do you have for me in workforce? What's your education attainment level? Where do trades fit in from tradesmen? Do you have a good trades? You know, how many welders do you have? How many machinists? Those kind of things. They ask all those questions, but there's something people miss almost every time. If you bring, let's say you're bringing an industry to town and they're going to spend a week in town, they're probably going to be in town before you even know they're there, number one. Or they're going to come back, some key executives from that company, if it's a large company, are going to come back a couple of weeks later without you knowing it. They want to know one thing in particular: what is here for my wife or husband and children to do? So the biggest thing that I would recommend to help you implement opportunity zones and opportunity zone funds is treat it like you're entering your 5-year-old daughter in a Little Miss beauty contest. You want her to be the prettiest girl on the stage. You already know that she is, but the people in the audience don't. People in the audience is your company coming in. You have to be the prettiest you can be for that company, because all of your competitors are putting their first best foot forward. And the first impression is the one the company leaves with. And if everything is equal, the incentives are equal. Let's say you got a competing county in your state. Typically, the incentives are going to be pretty well equal between the two of you. The company is going to look at all the things that make the company work, and they're going to say, what kind of reception did I receive? Were they friendly and did they invite me, or did they not?
Yeah, that's a really, that's one thing that we're noticing is the competition is pretty fierce right now. Okay, so with that, we're actually we left ample time for everyone to kind of submit their own questions as well based off of what Sam was stating. So with that, we'll go ahead and open it up to questions. You have a question and answer block for those of you in the audience. Feel free to input into those or into the chat. And as we get those, we end up getting it as well.
Kirstie, as there are coming up some questions to you, let me extend or expound just a little bit on the opportunity zones themselves, the funds, the implementation, and some of the things I've seen on a statewide level that, if there's folks from other states, and I'm positive there are, Kentucky has done an excellent job. They've created a very robust website that lists every one of the opportunity zones. They've been extremely proactive in trying to let folks know, to the point the chief legal counsel for the Economic Development Cabinet is Jessica Burke, who has immersed herself in opportunity zones. She was invited to sit in on the panelist discussion at the White House in the last few days. She has traveled all over the state of Kentucky putting on opportunity zone webinars for local communities. They've actually put them online so that they do a whole lot of what we're doing from a economic development standpoint for the local communities, just educating them a little bit on how they can work, fielding questions. And, they've been doing this, the Economic Development Cabinet done it for a Kentucky Association of Economic Development meeting probably 8 months ago. And a lot of the questions that come up were questions that could not be answered, but they were being asked back to Treasury and the IRS and the government, and they issued a lot of those questions that was coming nationwide into the rulings that was sent out this last week. Now, there will also be another set of regulations and rulings come out later this year to clarify some of the things that were still a little murky, if you will. But they have told us that you can rely on these rulings and these regulations as guidance. And as guidance means if you get into the fund and you do it exactly as it's noted today, you're okay. They're not going to come back 2 months and say, oh, we're changing everything and what you've done 2 months ago won't work. They're not going to do that. They've set it in so that the investments can go ahead and happen. And there are several investments nationwide that are happening. We're in the middle of one that looks pretty promising that it's going to happen with an industry expansion. So those things are really important to look going forward for communities, that you've got the regulations now, plus you want to watch for the last set. And typically there'll be legal firms and accounting firms in every state. I know there's several here within our state that actually put on seminars. We're putting on a seminar the 4th day of June. That'll be a regional for here in northeastern Kentucky. And if anybody is on here that is within driving distance of Ashland, Kentucky, it's a free webinar. It's not something we're trying to do as an income generator. We're doing it, and Kirstie will be helping us with it. We'll publish it on LinkedIn and Facebook and all the different social channels. And we will actually have, we're combining that webinar with an angel investing group to talk about how angel investors work and P3s, the public-private partnerships. We're doing it all from 10 to 3 with a luncheon. We'll have a legal representative from a large legal firm. It's in 8 states. We'll have an accounting representative that's from a 3-state firm. And we'll have a national angel group business association along with a local angel group that'll just talk about how that works. So that would be a great thing. If you're close enough here to attend, it would be great. If you're not, then by all means, I would recommend you go to a free webinar that any of the attorney groups, and you'll see them on LinkedIn if you're on there. And that's a great way to educate yourself and hear things from the professionals that's doing this every day for a living.
Perfect. Great. That actually answers one of the questions that kind of came in, was talking a bit more about how community foundations can be involved in bringing developers and investors to the Opportunity Zone area. Is there anything else that you want to kind of touch on with that, or did that?
Well, absolutely. Community foundations, if they're set up as a 501c3, the foundation itself is not looking for the savings on taxes because a 501c3 is tax exempt. But what they could do, that foundation could partner with someone else to supplement. Let's say if we'll use a small number of $1 million. Let's say that there's $900,000 in an Opportunity Zone fund that someone has, and they're $100,000 short on capital. They could loan, if they have the capital in the foundation, they could loan the fund or the operating business $100,000 to complete the capital stack, to where they would have a investment in that fund. I'm sorry, not the fund. They must put their money into the company as a loan. They can't invest in the fund to reap the benefits of the fund because it's not capital gain money. Only capital gain money is eligible to go into the fund, into the Opportunity Zone fund. But that foundation could backstop the fund with $100,000 of loaned capital that would then be paid back at whatever rate the foundation wanted to set it up. So there are ways that a community foundation or just an economic development organization, if you have a local economic development organization or industrial development authority, and they have capital on their books that is not being used, for example, if it's sitting in a CD that they're making a quarter, a 0.5% on, those folks could utilize that capital and put it into an investment deal to locate a company and then be paid back out of that, along with job creation. And that's what most of your foundations are set up for, is philanthropic, either helping out the community itself through improvements or job creation. So yes, it absolutely works for the foundations also.
Perfect. So this next question is coming from Paul. So he is on the Canadian border, and has a qualified zone with a qualified project whose principals are Canadian and created a Canadian and a US LLC. Are international investors eligible to take advantage of the zone?
It's a great question. I don't know that I'm qualified to answer. Uh, but what I believe is, and by all means, talk to your legal advisors. But what I believe is, if the Canadian investor has United States tax liability in a capital gain, I believe that would be eligible to go into the fund. But it would have to be from a United States tax burden that he would have. And that is an absolute question. That's the best answer I can think of off the top of my head. But there again, I'm not a lawyer, and that a legal expert in opportunity zones would probably be able to just spout you off the applicable statutes and exactly what different subsection deals with it that I couldn't. But it's a great question, especially if you can attract foreign investment into a zone and couple it with local investment or a fund. There could be a way for them to even partner to make a project work. But that there again, that would need to be a legal question answered by a legal authority.
Perfect. Going a little bit more into the Opportunity Zone Fund, what are the actual mechanics of creating an Opportunity Fund open to all investors? Will you kind of go through maybe a little bit more of a step-by-step process there in what you
Sure, I can do that. Let me do all three for you rather quickly. The first is a private fund that you would own on your own. It would be two people. It must be either a partnership, a limited liability partnership, a limited liability corporation, S Corp, can be any of those. That's the actual fund. So let me run through the process of how it's done on the private one, and the other ones are just a little different, but I can explain those pretty easy also. The private fund, not open to anyone, accredited or unaccredited investors, is set up. You realize your capital gain. We'll use stock, for example. If you've got $1 million capital gain in Apple, you sell that Apple stock, you invest the capital gain, that $1 million, into an opportunity zone fund. That is a legal fund that's set up by a law group that sets up all of the operating agreements and all the legal structures and puts in there what reporting requirements are. They haven't given us all of the final rulings on reporting. We know that there'll have to be a reporting period every 6 months, but we don't know exactly what's going to have to be reported. It could be total investment, it could be capital, it could be total equity, it could be jobs created. I mean, there could be several things within the report. They haven't given us that yet. So that fund would be established with your capital gain, and you would own that fund, the two people would. The fund would then invest in an opportunity zone project. That could be a building that's sitting vacant that needs to be improved. It could be raw land that you want to do. I can give you one example. Northeast Kentucky Development, our group, started a fund that's a private fund. It's now closed out, so no one else can invest in it. It was private, and we bought 385 acres on the Ohio River, and we're developing an industrial park. We announced it 2 weeks ago, and we're doing a master plan, and we're going to develop an industrial park in northeastern Kentucky within the Opportunity Zone, and we're going to attract companies, hopefully, into that. And if a company wants to own their own thing, we could buy it, and or they could buy it, and then when they bought it, whatever gains we had would have to be reinvested right back into an opportunity zone fund, or we would create a tax liability issue. But you don't have to hold the property all the way through. You can sell it, but then you have to put that money right back into a fund. You can't just go spend the money or put it somewhere else. That's the private fund. Then the fund for accredited investors is you would set the fund up, and typically that's not an individual or even two individuals. That would be someone experienced in handling funds that know what they're doing, they would put out what's known as a private placement memorandum. And that private placement memorandum could only be viewed and considered by accredited investors that I described what they were earlier in our conversation. That is the fund that's open to accredited investors only. It would get the money in it, and then that fund would do the same thing a private fund does. Now, the other type is a completely open fund. There is a considerable amount of reporting requirements that's required with that type of fund, and anyone can invest in that fund. And those are typically your big national. I'll mention two of them because they're all over the internet. And if you're a LinkedIn user or a Facebook user and you do anything in economic development, the algorithm tells LinkedIn and Facebook that you're economic development looking at things. You've probably seen one of two funds. One is Cadre, CADRE, and the other one is Virtua, VIRTUA. You can Google them and look, and they'll tell you what they're doing. They won't send you their offerings or private placement memorandums without you registering and go through a vetting process to determine, number one, if you're an accredited investor, if you're not accredited, or what type of investor you are. But you can definitely get information that way also. And the non-accredited fund, for open to anyone, can, depending on how the fund manager sets it up, there are funds out there that are taking investments as low as $5,000. I mean, I know of those. I don't know of any lower than that, but I do know there are a couple of open funds out there that will take capital gain investment as low as $5,000.
Perfect. All right, thanks. The next question is coming about kind of a prospectus and the development of that. So how can potential vendors be identified for developing an opportunity zone prospectus for a community's chosen project?
Okay, ask me that one more time. Let me make sure. I think I know what the question was, but please ask it one more time.
Yeah, so how can potential vendors be identified for developing an opportunity zone prospectus for a community's chosen project?
Okay, if I understand the question correctly, you have an opportunity zone that has a prospective piece of land that wants to be developed. Now it's that, or they may be asking, is there an industry or someone wanting to locate on a piece of land? So I'm gonna cover both of them for you, and hopefully I can cover your question. By all means, if I don't give you an answer that really is what you was looking for, if I don't mind Kirstie giving you my contact information, you can send them, or send it to Kirstie, and she'll get it to me. We'll try to, or no, we will answer any question you got. If we can't answer it, if we don't know the answer, we'll send you somewhere that can. But in regards to that, what you would look for is, I would call I would call my local economic development authority, or I would call my state economic development authority and ask them, are there, or who are the fund managers that have expressed interest in locating funds within our area or within our state. Now, it's going to depend on the type of project you have on what fund managers will look. Some fund managers are only going to look for businesses that are in an opportunity zone to locate and invest in those businesses. Other ones are going to look at the real estate piece only, because some funds won't invest in an operating business, but they'll invest in the real estate and lease that back to an operating business. Then there are some funds that will want to be in both. They'll want to have ownership of the real estate and the business. And typically, they're not full owners. They buy in equity. The fund will buy in equity to the existing business to scale it up, give it more capital, let it expand. Maybe they have a product line that they're out of capital to produce, but they could get another say double the production, but they just don't have the money to make that work from a capital standpoint. Your fund managers will invest to scale up, making the company more attractive and make the company more money, and that's how the fund managers receive their money back. But it really depends on what area you're in, on who you would contact and how you would find the right person to partner with your local organization.
Perfect. Yeah, so the clarifying kind of component was there that your first understanding is correct. Industrial site in an opportunity zone area with due diligence in process for potential spec building. So
Yeah.
that was the first one.
Yes, that's exactly right, and that was the first iteration of the first scenario.
Perfect. Okay, so the next question and the last one we have right now, unless anybody else has a couple more, what can local government officials in very rural areas do to promote opportunity zones?
Well, it's funny that someone asked that question because let me give you a little bit of a scenario. Um, the Northeast Kentucky region that we're working in, two of the counties are two of the most rural counties in Kentucky. And Kentucky has a lot of rural counties. They are um, in the scale of things, they are less populated with employment. They're small population counties. And the best thing I can offer as advice for rural counties to attract opportunity zone funds is co-market together. You must, and I know that most people don't want to hear this, but the question was asked, so I'm going to be honest with you. The best way you can attract investment from industry and also from fund people is to show that you get along with your neighbors. If you've got two counties that are marketing together and showing that it could be on the border between two counties, it could be in one county with the other one working on a regional effort. If you embrace the regional concept, the companies are much more attracted because they know there's not a territorial dispute going on. Now, if you're in a very large county, like what some of our counties are, you must keep in contact with your economic development people through your state government. Different ones are named different. I mean, some of them have different names, but your local representative, commissioners, senators on the local level, not national, not U.S. senator representatives, but the local ones will know who you can contact to be able to put in front of and tell them, we're out here. We want to do something. We're willing to work with companies, bring them to see us, and they will give you the prerequisites that most companies ask for. The other way, if you have a little bit of money to spend, and usually you have to do that to make it work, is to have a marketing campaign with at least a minimal website that shows who you are. It can just be as simple as pictures of your local communities, your industrial areas. It doesn't have to be fully interactive and robust. You just need some digital presence that they can come and look at. The reason for that is before the company ever comes to your community, they're going to know as much about your community as you do. Typically, if it's a fairly major project, they're going to involve site selectors, and the site selector is going to come and look at the community before the executives or the decision makers within the company ever show up. They're just, and they're going to, I'll give you one little bit of advice that was given to me by a site selector years ago. When it comes to site selection, you are not in the process of inclusion, you're in the process of exclusion. And think of it this way. Think of a large funnel you would have in your kitchen. All of the communities that want a project from a single company starts out the top of that funnel. And the site selectors are looking at reasons to throw someone out of the funnel so they have a smaller pool to get it down farther. And the bottom 4 or 5 companies that come out of the bottom of that funnel are the 4 that the company goes and visits. The rest of them doesn't get considered at all.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sam. I know that we haven't gotten any other questions, so if anybody has any kind of final ones coming through, please let us know. We are super thankful that you came and joined us today, Sam. I know you're pretty advanced in the opportunity zone stages, so it was great to have your insight. Just kind of some housekeeping things for everybody. The slides and this presentation will be posted. You will receive an email with the link later, probably on Monday. We're also going to put together kind of a quick case study that talks about the topics that Sam has experienced himself over on a case study in Northeast Kentucky. So that will be available to you as well. If you have any lingering questions that you weren't able to get answered, or if something kind of pops up later, you're welcome to send those questions over to myself. And then I also have Sam's email up on the screen as well. So by all means, go ahead and send. I know he will. Sam, I'm just going to volunteer you to, like, here's your email for everybody.
It's not a problem.
But we appreciate all of you on today, and we hope that you were able to learn something. And then we hope this really kind of helps move your opportunity zones forward. If there's anything we can do, please let us know. But Sam, again, thank you so much. It was great to have you on here. Do you have any closing remarks or anything else you would like to say?
The only thing I have, Kirstie, is I believe this is a great advantage for communities if they can get out in front of it. And I think that it offers just one more tool in the tool bag to attract a company. And the more things you can have available for them to pick from, the better your company looks, or I'm sorry, your community looks to these companies. But other than that, Kirstie, that I think it pretty much covers it. And by all means, if anyone has a question, feel free to send it to me. I'll get you an answer if it's something I can't answer. I have a bit of a rule within our company and companies. No email goes unanswered over 24 hours. So if you send one, you'll see some sort of a reply. Even if I can't give you an answer, it'll be, I don't know, but let me find out. So we will be responsive to anything that you have a question on.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sam. Thank you to everyone who was able to attend. And again, look for the link for everything. And if you need anybody, please don't hesitate to reach out. So with that, everybody enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week.